Welcome to Security Today podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Baer. That's Uncle BAER _ on Instagram and Twitter. As you know, this show is brought to you by Sprinter Business Solutions. So they are promoting us and giving us the time to do this. And I'm so excited because we're back again at another Bid2Bank episode. These things have been going off the charts. And so I couldn't let it stop. I couldn't let the momentum die down without getting the one true OG, my friend from like 7 years back on Instagram on here, Tech of the Town. And so we had to get him in today, but that's who we're interviewing. And I just want to give you guys a reminder, this Bid2Bank series is so that you listeners can, have a different perspective of how people are doing it out there. It's been so nice because the guys that I've had on here have been real humble, coming on like, well, I don't know if I can answer these questions, or, I don't know if I'm exactly what it's looking for, but everybody that we've had on here has been just excellent in giving that. So I didn't want to stop there. I wanted to keep it going. So we go through interview questions from marketing and sales to the bid, the project management, to the customer experience, and to the bank. And then we hit them with the humbling question and the bonus question. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I've got my friend Zsolt here with Tech of the Town. How's it going, brother?
It's going, man. What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. I don't know, those are some big shoes to fill, man. I've been listening to the episodes, and I don't know if I can spring some knowledge that those guys already didn't cover, but I'll try my best.
Yeah, no, it's good, man. It's just another perspective, if we can conglomerate, 150 of them or something like that, maybe we'll have like the perfect model for a company. I'll start selling little pamphlets or something like
That'd be awesome, man.
But anyways, man, so I always like to start these out and just give the listeners kind of an idea of who you are and what your company does. But right before that, just tell me how you got into the industry.
Oh, man. That's a really long-handed story, but I'll give you the short version.
Okay.
I immigrated to the country, and like some immigrants in my personal shoes, we go through some trials and tribulations where the usual doors of schooling and business aren't open to us the way it would be to most people. So I basically went through my high school years working with jobs on the side, and I landed in tech. I had a Cisco course through what we had in BOCES in New York. It's a curriculum where usually the kids that aren't too good in regular curricular schools do blue-collar type stuff, and I just ended up there by proxy. And I was very fortunate to have a professor that I was able to lean on for advice and kind of looking at the world in a little different way, because in school you go through and you're being fed the constant college. And this gentleman took it upon himself to show me that blue-collar jobs can be way more successful in many cases than just your average college course that everybody was being funneled through. So through him, I was able to explore side work where I worked for a TV repair company for a while during school. A couple of years later, I did a computer repair company. And slowly but surely, that trickled into getting my first IT job at a school district. And I was a level 3 IT guy where basically I was the runt of the group, and a projector went down, a printer went down, a computer went down, etc. I was the one to run around and do all the work. So it got me really quickly familiar with how to work in high intensity and high density environments with clients and students and teachers. Those were my clients at the time. So being professional in a level that you're always on and you're always thinking, but you're always working in the background while trying to make it look like you're not disrupting a class, kind of got my foot into the tech industry. And I guess that just evolved because my next job after that, I became a director of IT for a Catholic school. Did that for about a year. I didn't really like the whole suit and tie thing. Sitting behind a desk is just not for me. I missed the classroom to classroom. I guess high stress environment was just more my deal. So my next venture after that was working for a company on Long Island in New York called Telstar. Shout out, Kurt, if you can see this. I hope you're listening. My bosses over there were some of the finest gentlemen that I've ever had the pleasure of working for. And I've learned so much from them. And they were really my first venture into the high-end home theater, low voltage integration industry. along with a gentleman named Peter Malzone, who I worked for, company NYSS Digital, little plug there, another one of my mentors. And these companies, these gentlemen, just kind of taught me everything. And as I saw the business move and I saw how everybody kind of slides and glides through the industry and the jobs, I pretty much set out to make a name for myself with my knowledge of the products, knowledge of the customer base, and just figuring that, you know what, like anybody else that's worth their salt, if I can do this for someone, I can probably do it on my own and actually reap the benefits. Little did I know it comes with a lot of other things that nobody ever taught me, but that's my start. That's how I got into it, and I just got, the cojones to just go after it after a while. So
Yeah,
that's
that's awesome.
that's pretty much it.
Where did you immigrate from?
Originally Hungary, born and raised, landed in JFK in 1999. Yeah, and then that was a trip from there.
Yeah, for sure. And what took you from New York to Florida?
New York to Florida was interesting. So my girlfriend, now fiance, got an offer from a company. She worked in the fashion industry, and I don't know. It was just one of those things. We moved in together, and housing in New York is sky high, as you know it. It's not
Yeah.
exactly a cheap place to live. Work was great. I had customers of my own while doing a full time job, but at the end of the day, it was just one of those things where we kind of looked at each other after being glued to like the Travel Channel and watching all these couples that I don't know collect like anemones and somehow have $1 million budget for houses, just travel the
Yeah, yeah.
world and go see other places. And we're like, you know what, we could do this, right? And we leapt, and here we are. Florida it is.
Nice. Yeah. And you got the Tech of the Town logo right there. I'm repping your shirt too.
Thank you,
And
babe. I
you
appreciate you.
got that Miami Vice, like very Florida vibe, retro vibe. So I had to bring out the stash for that too.
Thank you.
You know what
Thank
I'm
you.
saying?
Appreciate
But
it.
that's awesome, man. That's cool to hear. So yeah, let's get into the questions then.
Sure.
So we always start in marketing and sales. And I guess just want to know what's your most sold product or service, and when during a sales pitch, when do you introduce it, I guess, or how do
All
you
right.
go into the sales pitch to then introduce it?
So my sales pitch is a little bit less. I think it's a little bit more extracurricular than most. The reason being is I started out in a very have to go after this manner. So my sales pitch went from I'm the guy that'll do anything for a buck to get into your house, right? When I first started out in Florida, it was a proxy of working for a company that didn't do right by me. I had to go after workman's comp. I got run over by one of their work vans, and long story short, it just was not a pretty divorce from that company.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was pretty much broke when my girlfriend looked at me and said, you can do this on your own. You don't have to just do it on the side. And
Mm,
I started thinking to myself that could be a way to go. So one of my starts here was registering through all the proper channels and proxies to you got to be on the up and up as best as you can. I mean, at the bare minimum, have insurance, man. I mean, you just
mm-hmm.
don't know what's going to happen. So, but if my advice to someone if they're going to start out, definitely do all the right paperwork, be as legit as you can be, and if you don't know how to go about those ways, then talk to somebody that does. But for me, my start here, as far as advertising and quoting and all that, started on Thumbtack. As funny as
Mm,
that is, and Facebook, really,
no.
just trying to market myself to anyone in the area. In Florida, in this particular area, in Southwest Florida, we have a huge senior population. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with Florida construction, brother, but one of the biggest downsides to Florida construction being that we have hurricanes is all the concrete and all the hurricane proofing windows and double pane and wind resistant windows and argon filled windows and all that stuff. And slowly through jumping around and doing a lot of like ring cameras and ring doorbells and Google this and all the off shelf stuff that you can find at Best Buy that I was going to houses to install for a buck, I really started coming up with a concept. And this is my long-winded way of answering your question, I guess, is that my best product started out on the residential side. And that's because I saw an opportunity in the market, which was a lot of these bigger companies that had multiple guys like me were not really going after. And that was taking homes that were already constructed, people were already living in. They were build-a-grade homes for the most part, but were not pre-wired correctly. So you'd have
Mm.
these beautiful, spanning, high-ceiling buildings, and you had no internet, no Wi-Fi, no signal. Calls would drop. And my product became the racks that you might see on my Instagram, which are these 16 to 22U racks that I fill with access points, access point controllers, CCTV, and then whatever else the customer kind of wants thrown in there. And I give them like a package pricing. And, over the years, I've made a pretty darn good living off of that.
Yeah, so when you approach this, and you're right, that demographic definitely is a little bit older down there in Florida. My dad lived in Florida in Key West for like 6 or 7 years, and so I had a little bit of familiarity with it. But when you approach, I guess when you get an inquiry or something like that, how do you just hit them off the bat and be like, look, this is how I do things, I prepackage these? Or do you say, hey, you kind of detail their needs first and then you slide that idea in that
Right.
you're wiring houses like that?
So the way I do that is I'm very I'm very individually personal with my clients. So I
Mm.
won't just say this is our product and this is what we sell. I'm a small company, one man team in many ways, and then when I have help, it's really on the labor side. So I really make it a point to shake the hand of every customer I get. I'm old school in
Mm-hmm.
that way. My grandfather taught me the meaning of a handshake at a very young age, and I don't. I'm going to be the one of the few guys that comes on here and probably preaches against all the apps and all the CRM software and the QuickBooks and all that stuff. I'm very pen and paper man, and I'll go to every house that I quote. I meet the owners or the GC in the commercial case, and I really just listen to their problems. And not every solution will fit every budget. Not every budget will fit, every need. So, a lot of times we got to pivot. A lot of times I do have to shell out and sell the cheap stuff, but the cheap stuff is still better than, nothing. And I
Mm.
really try to tell the customer, yes, you're experiencing these problems that you just told me because of X, Y, and Z reasons. But that's not necessarily my opportunity to just go in and say, here's our, $10,000, $20,000, $5,000 package. It's really just an opportunity to make them understand as if, I'm a teacher. And whether they go with me after that or not is really completely up to them. I give them an option and I treat them in the way that I would treat, my own family or my own household. And I'll basically say, listen, I think this is what we should do for the money that you can spend on this. Anything less is not worth spending on. Respectfully, here's the quote.
Mm. Right on. And so they take that quote and then you've won the job. So what are your next, and this kind of works into that managing the project all the way through. What are the what did I say? Where is it? Oh, I went to project management and I skipped the bid. Look at that. Hold on. So yeah, no. So they're reaching out to you. You're talking to them, and
Right.
you're getting an idea of where their pain points are and an idea of maybe where their budget is. So do you use quoting software at all?
No, I don't. Again, I don't think I really need it for what I do. I'm, I'm,
For
I'm
sure.
in this very niche market where a lot more of my clients are like mid to high end residential than commercial.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the guys that I think, at least I've heard you speak to, either when they own their own companies, they have this amazing connection where they do a lot of commercial, right? Or a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the guys that you speak to are really maybe high end in the companies that they've been working for a long time, and they have the seniority and the access to all these biddings, and they get to manage the projects, basically project managers. I think I'm unique for this interview in the sense that I'm very small, but we turn over
Yeah.
very big numbers. And for that reason, my company has yet to lose that personal touch, and we don't do any software. Everything I do, a quote, everything goes into Word. I made myself a template, kind of like very circa high school level, in terms of like the way it looks. But
Sure.
it works for me. And what my bidding process is like is that, as a guy who really soup to nuts has been in the field from start to finish, pre-wire and shaking hands with the customer saying, here's the keys. I have the privilege of being able to know which product goes where, what those price points are. So when I walk into your house and you ask me for a quote, I can rattle off a very accurate number really quickly without needing to quote it.
Hmm.
Generally speaking, 90% of my clients will have their quote within the first hour of meeting me.
Mm.
After that, it's just a matter of shaking their hand and putting it on paper. But we don't use any software. We don't really need to. We just look at pricing. I know what my costs are. I know what my profit margin is. I apply that said margin with a little bit of room for error. And then, depending on the project, you have to kind of like figure how many hours is everything going to take. And I think the only thing that you're going to be able to bring to the table that can handle that is someone with experience. I don't think there's a software in the world that can quote hours accurately. As you and I both know, you could go do some project that's slated for 2 hours and it can take 20.
Yeah.
And it's really just a matter of knowing your field.
Definitely. And yeah, and you're totally like you're on point, and that is unique to definitely the guys that I talk to on this podcast and stuff like that. But that's exactly what I want out of the bid to bank is I want the gamut of guys out there that are and girls that are doing like everything from that residential to that high end commercial to niche residential and those sort of things. I myself have had some experience in that residential field, and it can really pay out when it is that niche. When you do find those areas that have the need, and you can provide a high technical level of information and products and devices, that really can pay out. And I've seen that, and I know that you do that. So when I guess let me spin this next question a little bit. If you're not using that software and you're kind of just using it as maybe almost like a subject matter expert to the bid of the things that you're doing, when you walk in there and you're talking to them and you're getting them that bid within the hour, can you explain your method a little bit at how you go at it? I mean, you kind of get an idea of where their budget is,
Mm-hmm.
but and you have their pain points, but what's your method of like bringing that together? Do you like
Okay.
hit high and then offer them something that's a little lower, or do you come in, you know, low to get the job because you know they'll have more in 6 months? What? How do you do that?
So it's funny. I'm, I guess, and it doesn't work with everyone, right? Not everyone's going to like you. I think that's one of the biggest things I've had to accept in this industry and in
In life?
adulthood in
Yeah.
general, right? Is not
Yeah.
everyone's going to like you. And Chris, you and I have shared several conversations about that, even within just our little social life. But um, with a client, is I think the biggest thing you have to have as far as a skill set is being able to read people. Um, it's almost like running this company has made me understand that I have to be kind of like a used car salesman, a lawyer, like Uncle Vinny style, and a banker and some guy who's like an emotional support person all at the same time. Because I get customers from all walks of life, and I try to treat every single client the same way. I don't care if they've got a buck to their name or 10 million, but you do have to assess budget upon arrival, right? So you really got to make some assumptions. If the customer drives, some kind of car, that's going to tell you a lot about, how well they're doing or how well not they're doing. If the house has other things going on, like if the kitchen's being remodeled, if the lanai's being redone, if new roof is going up, all those things are telltale signs of, there's some money here that is going to allow you to maybe quote higher, and not necessarily to make more money, but just to give a higher end product.
Right.
I think we all understand that the money that you spend on a job with guys like us is directly going to affect the quality of the work. And that's not to say that we don't try to do the best that we can at everything that we do, but all those Instagram picture perfect racks and all those bundles and combed wires and everything, if you're bidding a job that you had to give a huge discount on and you're really, really deep into it, there's just some things that aren't going to take priority, whether it's for your own pride or just the fact that the customer couldn't care less. So, there are ways to cut corners without affecting quality, but it's going to affect appearance. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me in quoting a job is assessing what the customers actually care about. And I will say that in most cases, a 65-year-old gentleman will never get up on a 6-foot ladder to look at the back of your rack to see how neatly you pulled your wires. They just won't. And as long as that wire loom is serviceable and the job is done well and the product that you sold is quality, you're really not going to have to care about it either. So that's where I make a lot of assessments in terms of like what I'm going to quote as far as time. How detail oriented is this job going to get? And that's not to say that we don't do beautiful work, because when we have the luxury of quoting jobs at what should be the standard rate in most cases, there's not going to be a hair that's out of place in terms of our looms and our wiring. So to explain the process, it's really just as simple as walk in the door, shake hands with the client, get a feel for what he or she needs, and really just be direct. What sort of budget were you thinking, sir? What kind of allocations do we have for this? What did you have in mind? How much did you want to spend? And you will, in most cases, get a very direct answer. Yes, you'll have to bid back and forth and kind of, grin your teeth and say, all right, well, you're not really going to get too far with that much, but just be honest. And when they ask you how much things are going to cost, my biggest pet peeve is when I have, gentlemen from other walks of life in different fields, say, well, we really have to come back and look at this. And right there, you could have lost the sale, because had you just said a price that says, hey, it's going to cost you this much, give or take, within reason, I think that's really the quickest way to sell a job. And for me, that's just been what's worked.
Yeah, I think that spans across all aspects of the industry, for sure on that point. That the quicker you can get that quote to them, it's on. You are on a time limit. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I know for certain that guys who run their own show, it is a hard battle. Like sometimes you're inundated, or you have other things that you have to worry about, and things that were maybe like brought to you in a different way than usual or something like that can push out even a couple weeks to be like, I need to get that guy a bid.
Yep.
That's difficult. So yeah, I think that definitely something to strive for is to make sure that bid is being given to them with like as little time as possible. And you're right, you do have play on both sides. I think some guys think that they say a number and then it's concrete, but people know if you're real with them and you're like, hey, look, I said this, but we want to add a little bit of labor here to make sure that it's right, or do that or that. So you won the job. Like they get the quote within the hour because it's tech of the town, and they're like, hey, I'll take it. So what are your first 3 steps in starting that project?
So as funny as it may seem, that happens a lot. And my first step is, okay, so here's how we work. We're going to take a deposit, right? And again, some guys might crack up hearing this, but I don't do credit cards. I don't do debit cards. I do cash. I do check. I do Zelle, Venmo, PayPal. That's it. I think we live in a world where we have the luxury of bypassing the credit card companies and the debit card companies. In my early days, I had too many bad experiences with people, especially with Amexes, that tried to cancel, backpedal. And if you've ever had an Amex, you know how great their customer service is. They always stand on the side of the client. So it puts too much burden on me as a small business to have to prove that the customer who is making a fake claim is lying. So I'm old school in that way too. And again, my preferred method of payment is check. Um, I trust the people I do work for. I think I have a certain luxury in choosing the clients that I get to deal with. I don't have a slew of phone calls every day from some company that is directing clientele towards me. I don't do Google listings. I really just try to stay within the people that I've done work for. And at this point in the game, 99% of my work is really just recommendations. And
Mm.
as a result of that, I think I'm spoiled in that way where I don't have to worry about the check being, good. But the process really, just to break it down, is, all right, thank you, sir or madam. So this, we're going to, if they agreed on a price right there, I take a deposit. And typically I take 50%. And it's the old half down, half when the job is done, right?
Right.
When we have a job that's larger, right? Again, this whole quote within an hour only can work when we're doing something relatively cookie cutter, right? Where
Sure.
your pricing, okay, 3 access points, a Ubiquiti controller, a rack, and whatever, it's going to cost this much, and it's going to be 20 wire runs and whatnot, right? Like, honestly, I can say that most guys can kind of wrap their minds around the fact that I'm not going to be quoting a warehouse full of cameras in an hour.
Yeah, yeah,
That's ridiculous,
yeah.
right?
Right, right.
But in the case where we do have to submit a quote, or even when a customer says, that's a great number, put it on paper, email it to me, right? Usually what I'll do is I break things down into sections. So like if the client's getting cameras, here's a section for cameras in the quote. Here's a section for Wi-Fi access points in the quote, whatever. And from each one of those sections, I'll take a piece, and I'll give them a down payment requirement, usually between the
Mm.
area of 35 to 50%. Just because as a small company, I don't want to have to be robbing Peter to pay Paul with equipment. I need enough money to operate, pay my guys, and buy the equipment that I need for the job, right? If
Right.
it's not already in stock. And once that threshold is cleared, where we get the check, we explain to the client, okay, your check's going to take, 3 to 5 days to clear. From that point forward, sir, madam, we're going to start ordering your parts. Okay. My lead time on orders typically is like 2 weeks. So once we get everything in, we open up everything, quality's checked, make sure that everything looks good. That's part of the process. You can't just show up with Amazon boxes or eBay boxes or Ubiquiti boxes unopened and not verify that the stuff you have is actually good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
our process after that is really just to schedule with the client. Again, I do a lot of work in residential where clients are home, clients are not home. Florida is a state where we have a lot of snowbirds. So sometimes I'll get a key to a house that I've never been in alone before, and it's mine. I could work there for 3 months. So really, it's just a matter of juggling the schedule, figuring out the timeline, communicating with the client if we have any questions or if they have any desired locations. And generally speaking, we will run into the occasional opportunity upsell, right? So we'll say, okay, hey, I just realized that as I'm crawling through your house that I've never crawled through before, you have old speakers in your ceiling, or you have wiring for this, or I noticed you have a lot of wireless Sonos around. Do you want to replace that with wired speakers? So always be selling. Don't slouch on that because we do want to grow. So if you see a need, if you see an opportunity, if someone's complaining about, their alarm system not working, if you have a guy that you can recommend to them and take a percentage, do it. And it's really just from there managing the project like any other, start to finish. We do the pre-wire, we do our terminations, we do our rack, we do our final checks, we test, we label, and then we install and program. And then the biggest part I think that a lot of people miss, and this goes out to you camera guys, because the guys that do a lot of cameras that are starting out that, let's say, worked for a company, I cannot tell you how many times I've walked in where the client has perfectly good DVR, NVR set up with beautiful cameras, perfectly done. Nothing's labeled. The customer doesn't have the password, doesn't know how to take stuff off their NVR, doesn't even have access to it. And we end up having to either spend hours resetting or ripping out an NVR because the last guy that could have kept this customer just walked out on the job after he collected the paycheck.
Mm.
So the biggest thing for me is for the clients to know how to use what they have. And I take an email, a PDF sheet, a book in some cases, and I hand it to them and I say, listen, if I get run over by a truck tomorrow, this is all your access documents. This is your master password. This is the email account that I've set up for your DVR. This is the cell phone number that it ties to. X, Y, and Z, it's yours. And
Yeah.
giving them as much training as they need to use it.
Yeah, that's huge, especially in residential, because I mean, usually if it's in commercial, you're dealing with, a certain department, or you're dealing with like a specific person that they have all of that access if that person leaves tomorrow because they were all on the cloud or they were a managed, network or something like that, so they can access all those emails. But when it is the individual, and usually overall residential individuals who can pay for somebody to come in and do stuff like this aren't tech savvy,
No.
so they can't go find the email that you dropped or something like that. So that's huge. That's cool. That kind of plays into the next question of going into customer experience. So you're already touching on that, but in the life cycle of a project, um, and I'm actually really glad. I'm like getting more and more glad as this podcast goes on that I got you on this podcast, because this is a unique niche. You know what I'm saying? And I want this podcast to be for everyone, right? And so you're gonna do it obviously 100% different than another guy's gonna do it on the other side of the country that is running, commercial marijuana something or this or that or the other. So when it comes to customer experience, the other reason, sorry, I'm ranting. The other reason that I'm glad you're on this podcast is because I've had my fair share of residential, doing high-end residential in Montana when I was out there for a little while.
I
And
remember
so
that.
I can really relate. You know what I'm saying? I can really get that you do get a lot of client FaceTime. They bring very uneducated yet unique questions that you kind of have to figure out what they're actually asking,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to train them when they have a hard time with their Apple TV. You have to train them how to run an
Oh,
NVR
dude.
or a DVR.
Or where's my
Um,
Netflix password? And I'm using my
yeah,
granddaughter's, and now I got to call someone in a different time zone. Hey, grandma doesn't know her Netflix, But we do these
right.
things, and I know you
Yeah.
know from being in Montana, man. Like I've seen the work you did out there, and I know that you could relate to it's almost an intimate experience with
Mm,
clientele compared to like working with a general contractor, which I do a lot of now, interestingly enough. But it's so different. And I'm sorry to backpedal. I just want
no,
to
you're
just
good.
also tell people that, and this is really advice for the guys that are maybe trying to branch out on their own and really, make a name for themselves, especially on Instagram. You know, don't pay too much attention to the perfection that's out there. And like Chris, we talked about this a few times, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has the ability and the time when they're taking a photograph or a video of something to make it perfect for that particular reason. But instead of getting caught up in spending time on making the perfect rack or making the perfect home or whatnot, you really want the experience to be perfect. And you can never get to that point unless you listen to the customer. And
Hmm.
this applies for residential. This applies for commercial. If you're talking to somebody that is saying, "I need X, Y, and Z," but you already in your back of your mind know that that's not what they need, don't cut them off.
Mm,
Because a lot of times, as tech guys, we can come across and gals, we can come across really pompous, right? Like that's why we get this whole like we know it all deal. um, Listen to the client, even if they're calling, their cell phone signal Wi-Fi, if they're calling their Netflix account Amazon, if they're telling you that their printer's broken, but it's because their computer is not connected. Just listen to the whole problem, and then form a nice reply without making them sound like they're stupid. Because
yeah.
we're here to help. That's my number one reason why I love doing what I do, is because I know I'm helping people in my own weird special way, right? But if you don't take the time to listen to someone, you'll never be able to sell them on anything, because
Yeah.
you're constantly trying to push a narrative when they weren't even felt heard in the first place. So before we can get to that point, just listen to your clients, no matter how silly whatever they're asking for sounds. Always reason with them. Well, why do you want that? Why do you think you need that? Who told you you needed that? Get all the information before you even push the pitch.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a bent, it's almost a bent in the entirety of the industry. And maybe it's because we're stressed. Maybe it's because there's a lot on our plate. It's not easy to get tech to talk to each other. We all know that, it can sometimes hold you up for 4 hours on something that this time that I resetted it, it worked, something
Yeah,
like that. And so maybe it's all of that tension, but the industry itself does have a bent to be like, not empathetic, not kind,
yeah,
both ways. Not kind and empathetic to the guy who was there before or seeing some other guy on Instagram or Facebook or something like that, which I try to push that all the time just to be kind in that aspect, because that can may look like shit because he lost his dog that morning and he didn't want to be at work on a Friday
right.
afternoon that's running him into 11 o'clock at night now, and his wife and kids are at home. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Yep.
just be empathetic towards it. It doesn't mean that it's right that his can looks like a wire nest, but we need to be kind towards that, and that goes the other way towards the customer. It's exactly what you're saying. That even if they're saying the wrong thing, if they felt listened to, it's going to be a better experience for them, which will make it a better experience for you.
Yeah.
And then you're their guy. Then you're the
Exactly.
guy who's like, I got an AV guy, I got an IT guy.
Right. Your
Then
family.
you're it.
I,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know in your experience, and again, the reason I went on this rant is to really explain the customer experience after, right? Like the whole deal where you do a project, and then a company gets asked, okay, well, what do you do for your customers after? And really, most companies, oh yeah, we give a warranty. It's 90 days. It's a year. Here's a service contract. That's not really a customer experience, right? I mean, just as anyone that's bought a car, what has your customer experience been after you bought a car, right? Things break, you get told they're not covered, or there's a surcharge, or there's a wait at the dealership, right? You don't want to become the car dealership. You want to become the business that stands out for picking up the phone, not having some robotic voicemail, answering emails, showing up when you say you're going to, um, and not just dropping the client after you took money from them. Because while I completely agree with you on the whole, don't comment on other people's racks or whatever because you don't know what happened to them, right? Like, and my add to that is I've done a ton of stuff for friends, family, customers that I didn't get paid to do. So I just did it in the best way I could with the limited resources that I had, and I did it for free or for very little money just to get them going. Senior citizens on limited incomes, veterans, whatever. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to afford rewiring their whole house to make it perfect. So, but on the flip side of that, a lot of companies will just throw something together and collect their paycheck. Things will work until the next update, or barely work, or maybe the client wasn't even there when they finished. They got their check. The client's back 3 months from a vacation, and that's why you were able to work in the house. And by the time they come back, nothing works. Do not be the company that doesn't keep in touch with your clients. A lot of my clients, I've been invited to weddings. Half the time I'm on service calls. I get dinner offered. I sit with the family. We chat. We BS. I've been on little trips with customers of mine. I mean, it's been an experience like unlike any other. And I think the reason I do what I do as well as I do it is because I have that trust. I have that relationship with my clients where, hey, Zolt's coming over. Yeah, just leave the garage door open, or they know I'm a night owl. How late are you going to be today? You want dinner? It's just a different perspective, and they know that if I sold them something, there's not going to be red tape. There's not going to be any warranty card. Oh, sorry, I can't cover this because you were silly and you did something you weren't supposed to. I'll cover it to the best of my human ability, and the key is to stay human. Never forget that we're people, they're people, everyone's going through their own struggles, and we're all just a bunch of strugglers going through our way in life trying to find our path, right? So if someone screws up because they plugged in the wrong DC adapter to something because they were cleaning and they burnt out a switch, hey, I'm sorry, like you burnt out your switch. It's going to cost this much to replace it, but hey, let me put it in for you for free. Just this one time. And now you learn never to do it again.
Mm.
But other companies would charge this whole slew of reconfiguration fees, call fees, whatever. I don't make a lot of money on a lot of calls that I do. And I know that's not a good way to do business, but I'm not in it to be rich. I'm in it to be tech of the town. My name is everything. My work is everything, and my relationship with my clients means nothing. Nothing. There's nothing more to me that means more than that. It's just everything to me. So I'm different in that way.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
a,
So
a ramble.
yeah, that's awesome, man. That's the content, baby. No, so okay, so the project gets done. They're happy, you're happy. From a bank aspect, you said you then take the 50% like on the back end of it also?
Yeah.
Yep. And then once you complete that job, let me just ask you, and you can curve it how you like.
Sure.
But when you get in, when you get that money in, are you putting money aside for just cash flow? Do you put some money into any marketing? I think you said you don't. You have a nice truck, so I know that sometimes those things don't work how we want them to. So how do you kind of your like method of moving money towards your business?
Okay. So it's, again, think small, because my method
Yeah, for
doesn't
sure.
will not work for big companies. My method will not work for companies with more than 5 employees. For the time being as small as I am, I'm very in demand. So I know I have work booked out months ahead of time.
Mm.
And I I don't know how much Shark Tank you watch, but I'm a huge fan
Oh,
of Barbara Corcoran.
yeah, yeah.
And Barbara Corcoran once went on an interview, and she's a very successful woman. Um,
Smart.
and she once went on an interview and talked about her mother and said that even though they were dirt poor, her mother always said money was meant to be spent,
Mm.
and she never saved a dime, and neither does Barbara. And I kind of looked at that interview and smiled, because I grew up dirt poor, never had anything, and we always got by somehow. So when I started this venture, my only goal was to make as much money per week as I would have gotten paid on a paycheck, which,
Hmm.
for some people may vary. My paycheck after taxes, I believe, was like 450, 550 bucks. So as
Mm.
long as I was clearing that money, I was good. I've just grown very accustomed to making a good life on very little. So as a company, it started out as sole proprietorship, and bad habits formed because you tend to commingle your income of business with your personal assets.
Yeah.
And I do suggest that everybody takes a really good seminar on money management, or just pay your accountant, if you have a good one, to just have a 2-hour sit down with you and explain to you how money works, how
Hmm.
taxes work. Because what I quickly figured out is that if I keep doing this, and the larger I grow and the better I become at doing things, I'll end up owing a shit ton of money to the government.
Yeah.
So, and my
Right.
wake up call was when I went from a sole proprietorship to an S corp, and I got hit with a bill that said I owe like $10,000 in taxes because I
Yeah.
never paid my quarterlies. Because I just figured
Right.
out, what the hell, I'll just pay it at the end of the year. And I had to dip real deep into like my safe. I don't know, you can't see it behind me, but I had some valuable things that I had to get rid of in a very big hurry to pay for that tax bill. But
Yeah.
I think what I do now is kind of a variation of being fiscally responsible and planning, and also planning for jobs and savings. Now I take the money that I get, and I figure out how much are my monthly operating expenses, employees, car insurance, health, food, whatever, gas. Gas is really important now, especially when you run vans. And then what items did I use from my typical stock? Because there is a there is a need to reinvest in your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the smallest of guys need to understand that not everything you get at the end of a job is profit. You need to take some of that money, and I don't care how broke you are, because when I tell you I go from 15,000 in the bank on Monday to negative $3 in the bank on Thursday to this very day, I mean it. I'm not afraid. I'm not ashamed to say that I am rich broke because I have everything I need. I got my bills paid. I got food in the fridge. I got luxuries that I probably shouldn't be buying. Um, but at the end of the day, I can get a paycheck one day and it's gone the next. And that's okay because I know that next week I'm starting another project. The week after that, I'm doing another pre wire. So I've been smart enough to know that where my next paycheck's coming from. A lot of people think paycheck to paycheck is a bad concept. It's not. The problem with paycheck to paycheck is if you don't know where the next one is. I'm proactive in hunting for jobs, talking with people. My social circle is always expanding. I'm shaking hands. I'm spending money on dinners, meeting people, going places. Not being antisocial really puts me in a position where I know where my jobs are coming from and when they're going to happen. Um, but at the same time, if you just keep money in the bank, you have to understand that it's either going to be taxed or you're going to spend it on something stupid. Because, and I'm sure you've been there, Chris. I know a lot of my friends that own their own businesses are. If they have a couple of grand in the bank and you've never been used to having money, it's almost like it's itching to be spent.
Mm.
Hey, I could buy that new toy. I could put whatever on my car, and I'm the same way. So I've taken my bad habits and I've turned them into good ones. And what I do is the minute I get a paycheck, I look at my inventory and I reorder. And I tend to reorder more than I ordered last time. So if I'm out of Ubiquity switches, Dream Machines, access points, I reorder those. You're gonna hate me for this one. I go down to ADI and see what's on the sales sheet. Our
Yeah.
cameras on sale, on speakers on sale. Whether I have a customer for them or not, if it's a good price, I buy it. Um, if you have an industry where you're constantly selling certain amounts of product, no matter what, it doesn't matter if you don't know where you're going to install this pair of, Rust sound speakers or, whatever it is, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you can save 30% the day you have money, you don't have to spend 30% more on the day that you're strapped for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep an inventory, I keep cycling it, I make sure that the bills are paid, and I take a small paycheck. On paper, and my financial guy can tell you this, I don't make a lot. I pay myself the bare minimum. I give myself the same paycheck today as I was making 6 years ago working for somebody else. I get $400 a week. That's it. And I'm cool with it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, that's good, man. That's definitely unique, and I appreciate you sharing that. You know what I'm saying? Because I understand that like our the platforms that we work on are very like try to look your best. And the truth about business is, and this is with you and everybody else that I've interviewed, is that like on the inside of it, you're right. We're all struggling. Like we're all like learning to put pieces together on things that we didn't know about yesterday, And so growing that and coming from, your story, I'm just really appreciative of it. And I'm really appreciative that that you shared it with us and that sort of thing. What do you feel like is one area maybe in the whole of your business that you could get a little better at as Tech of the Town a business? Doesn't have to be specifically to Zsolt, but for Tech of the Town.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like most companies, I need to figure out a better way to grow. Um,
Mm.
the problem is that you talk to a lot of people, and if you fall into the trap that I fell into the first year, kind of like when you and I first started talking, I was always looking at somebody else's lawn, and I was always asking
Yeah.
myself, why is it so freaking green over there, man? Like I got grass here, but looks like it needs some water. It needs some seed, needs some de-weeder. And I really had a hard time creating the identity that I have now without feeling like I'm a failure every day. And it took a lot to get over that because everybody was posting perfect things and perfect vans and especially the guys that were companies with multiple employees, multiple vans. I was always getting this like size envy, right? And I guess life just humbled me by forcing me to kind of struggle the way I've struggled to get through and to the point that I'm at now where I actually genuinely feel successful. But at the same time, I still haven't figured it out yet. And what I need to work on is how to grow, how to get good employees, how to keep them happy, keep them well fed, and while maintaining the success the company has without losing all those personal touches. And I think that's going to take me learning how to speed up my processes in some way. I'm very ADHD and very just like put things off to the last minute in my nature. So there's some things I got to work on there. So, in respect to the question, anything that tech of the town has to work on, I have to work on. And
Yeah.
for me to be able to do that, it's going to take some more self-discipline and slowly be coming up with systems. Like, again, I really stress to anybody that's listening to this that I am not perfect. I am happy at what I do. I'm good at what I do. But, running a multi-million dollar corporation is not my expertise. And I just haven't found a right method for me yet. That doesn't mean that somebody else may not have an idea that doesn't work. For me, it just hasn't yet. I have a lot of people that tell me how to do things, how I should do things, and they skip the part about where I get the money to start all that up. And everybody likes to say, oh, well, you go get a loan. And I'm just with the state of the banks in today's economy and how things have gone for me with taking any sort of money from anything, credit cards, whatever, I've just not had good luck with any of that. So I like to pay for things up front the old school way and go from there. So in short, how to grow and how to become a better company while maintaining, the personal touches with a larger size.
Yeah, for sure. I think that will probably resonate with a lot of people who listen to the podcast, just because I'm sure that no matter what stage you're in during, the startup business to running it at the level that you want, because this idea of a multi-million dollar company with 40 employees and national jobs, like that doesn't that's not it's not like a timeline of a business,
Right.
that measures success. It's not to say that you start off doing side jobs working for a W-2 and the end result, if you're successful at it, is a multi-million dollar company, because every single one of us are different. Every single one of us have different ambitions and drives. I feel like a lot of the guys who get to the multi-million dollar company, they look back and think that everyone under them didn't succeed, or everyone that has it, not necessarily under them, but just has a different perspective of business, are either weaker or they just didn't get as far as they got.
Right.
And that's too linear. That's too linear to think.
Mm-hmm.
And these episodes, when I'm talking to guys on Bid2Bank and the way that they're doing it, and you expressed it, and I feel like every single guy I've had on here has expressed like, well, I don't know if it's gonna be exactly what you're looking for, but here's my answers to the question. And I'm not looking for anything except for a answer.
Right.
Because we all do it different, and so that's critical. And I feel like you're right on there. And no matter where you're at, you do want things to grow and progress and be good. And that doesn't always mean that it ends at a multi-million dollar business. That means that it maybe ends with a successful business that got you what you need with a happy life for 30 years, man. That people chase that, and that's 1,000% a good thing to chase.
Absolutely. Can I tack on to that for the
Sure.
time?
Feel free.
So two little things I want to just touch on for people that I feel like I'm speaking to the demographic really more so that's starting out or just trying to find their way. And I don't know if my stuff will resonate with the people that are already successful, or whatever your definition of success is. But the thing that you can't forget is that none of this comes without bleeding. No amount of success. I don't care who you are, who you speak to. If you're out there doing it on your own, right? I'm very much the guy that I will not take a handout. I have never asked my parents for money, not that they have any to give. I don't have anyone rich in my family. I don't have a trust fund. I don't have an investor. I've really just struggled to get everything I have with my own means and my own debt and my own, fruition. But that's not to say it doesn't come without bleeding, because as you know, just from talking to me, seeing my posts, I literally will work all hours of day and night. You'll find me at customers' houses on a regular basis, midnight, 2, 3 in the morning, driving back home at 4 a.m., crawling into bed, getting 3 hours of sleep, struggling to get my mindset when I wake up at 8, 9, 10, whenever I end up getting enough energy to do so, to go back and do it again. I have sacrificed a lot of time with people I've loved. I've sacrificed hobbies. I've sacrificed a good portion of my health. By the way, this stuff, please stay away from it. I'm addicted, but don't drink Red Bull if you can help yourself. For me, it's just been one of those things where my goal is to establish a company that, gives me the happiness I need, financially and work-wise. But getting there took a lot of giving up. And for the guys and girls out there with spouses and families, work-life balance is a myth. If you're working a lot, your balance is how much sleep you're getting. And if you have to work a lot, you need to have a support system. So if you have a spouse, you guys need to work out some sort of understanding within each other, because I've had relationships on the verge of fail because of what I do until I learned how to communicate. And without that communication came a lot of misunderstandings. So that to get to the level of success where you're, taking your vacations every week or every month or whatever it is that you do on your free time, and you have money to ball out, you don't get there without the struggle and without the loss of time. The other part to that is success, right? What's your definition of success? Some people say it's $1 million. Some people say it's, not having to show up in the morning and just having a bunch of guys to do your work for you. Whatever your definition of success is, never forget that money does not define you. Okay? How much money you have in your bank account does not make you more or less of a person than the person standing next to you. I have been the brokest person on yachts for New Year's Eve parties for customers. I've been the brokest person in groups of businessmen that, for some reason, look up to me. And I've been the richest amongst my friends in certain cases, where I pull up in a car that they never thought, they would ever see me driving in. But never forget that you're still who you are, despite how much money you do or don't have in your bank account. When you become actually successful, you have enough money to live and be happy and do the job that you want without coming home and being miserable at the end of the day. That to me is success.
Well, the last thing is the bonus question. So from this Bid2Bank experience, from going from the very beginning of the job to the very end, in your category with your niche market that we've talked about, what is the most critical part in the completion of the job?
The most critical part.
Like, if you remove that one, that moment, everything else goes away.
I think that's going to have to be delivering what you promised. If you bid out a job and you tell the customer, oh, this system's going to do everything that you're asking for, and it goes back to listening to the client from earlier, right? If you didn't listen and you forgot to deliver on something, or you made a promise that you couldn't keep and you never communicated that inability to keep it, I think is going to destroy the project, and it's going to destroy your customer relation, and you will never be called to that house or business ever again. And on a larger scale, if you're dealing with a corporate entity, you potentially just lost an entire net worth of business. So for me, it's the same rules of business as being a good human being. Don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. And if you fail in any of those aspects on delivering the product that you promised, I think that's going to make it fall apart. You could have a bad customer experience, maybe even have an argument with a client, which I'm not going to be ashamed to tell you that I have. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to satisfy that customer's needs and satisfy the project. But to misrepresent what you were selling initially, or tell them you're selling them this, but you really just sold them a cheaper alternative, which a lot of people have done, is a real quick way to, one, get sued, and two, never be in business again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really think that, I ask that question every podcast, and it's like all these different things come up, and it's always something that you're like, well, yeah, that is critical. So I feel like my question in and of itself is kind of narrow, because it's like, what's the one thing? But I think it's like a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And that is definitely one of them, being able to deliver what you said you were going to deliver. So, well, man, that's Bid2Bank, but I so appreciate you being on this podcast. We're right at the hour, which is what I try to do. So thank you for coming on. Go ahead and tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can interact with you if they want to help or work with you, or
Sure.
Have a question, whatever it be.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on here. Sorry for clamoring on for a couple of things, but
No apologies. No apologies.
You can find us on Instagram, Tech of the Town. That's our handle. If you follow Uncle Baer, you're going to follow us by proxy. If you want to find us via email, it's techofthetown.info@gmail.com. Very generic. My phone number is listed on the Instagram, so if you ever want to give me a call, whether you guys are potential customers or if you're a fellow tech that just wants to pick my brain, the number's out there. Just look it up.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on, brother, and I'm glad to have you here, and we got another Bid2Bank in the bank. So thanks for coming, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, man. It was a pleasure.